the black janitor he pushed away, and the regret that haunts the Mafia boss. The mop hit the marble floor of the Sherman Tower lobby at 11:47 p.m. Miriam López worked in steady, precise strokes, her reflection sliding across the wet surface beneath her feet. She wore navy blue coveralls with the cleaning company logo stitched on the back. Her black hair was pulled into a tight bun. No jewelry. No makeup. Just a woman doing her job in an empty building. She was 31 years old. Born in Honduras. Legal resident for 9 years. And every Friday night, she sent half her paycheck to her mother and 2 younger sisters back in San Pedro Sula. The private elevator at the far end of the lobby chimed. Miriam did not look up. She knew who it was. She always knew. Edward Sherman stepped out. Tall. Broad. Dark hair cropped short. A black suit that cost more than she made in 3 months. Tattoos crept up the sides of his neck, disappearing beneath his collar. His knuckles were inked with letters she had never been close enough to read. He stopped 15 feet away from her. For 3 seconds, neither of them moved. Then he turned and walked toward the parking garage without a word. Just like every other night for the past 2 years. But tonight, something was different. Tonight, he had a folder in his hand with her photograph clipped to the front. Why does the most powerful man in Boston have a file on his janitor? If you want to find out what happens next, subscribe to this channel and drop a comment telling me where you are watching from right now. Let's begin. Miriam clocked out at 6 a.m. and walked 3 blocks to the bus stop on Atlantic Avenue. The morning air was cold. December in Boston meant layers, and she had 4 of them under her coat. Her breath came out in small white clouds as she waited. The cleaning job at Sherman Tower was one of 3 she worked. Mornings at a laundromat in Dorchester. Afternoons at a daycare in Roxbury. Nights at the tower. She slept in shifts. 4 hours here. 3 hours there. It was not a life. It was a system designed to keep her family alive 4,000 miles away. Her phone buzzed as the bus pulled up. A text from her sister Lucia. Mama needs surgery. Doctor says it cannot wait. $8,000. Miriam stared at the screen. The bus doors opened. The driver looked at her impatiently. She stepped on. Found a seat in the back. Read the message again. $8,000. She had $600 in savings. $600 after 9 years of working 3 jobs in a country that was supposed to be full of opportunity. She closed her eyes and pressed her forehead against the cold window. There had to be a way. There was always a way. She just had to find it. That night, Miriam returned to Sherman Tower at 10 p.m. She swiped her badge at the service entrance and took the freight elevator to the 3rd floor supply closet. Her cart was waiting. Mop. Bucket. Cleaning solutions. Trash bags. The same tools she had used 1,000 times before. She started on the executive floors. The building was mostly empty at this hour. A few analysts working late on the 7th floor. Security guards doing rounds. The hum of the ventilation system. On the 40th floor, she stepped out of the elevator and froze. Edward Sherman was standing in the hallway outside his corner office. He was not alone. 2 men stood with him. Big. Hard-looking. The kind of men who did not work in offices. One of them had blood on his shirt cuff. Edward's eyes locked onto Miriam. She gripped the handle of her cart. Every instinct told her to back into the elevator and disappear. But her legs would not move. Edward said something to the 2 men. Low. Quick. They walked past Miriam without looking at her and took the elevator down. She was alone with him now. He walked toward her slowly. His shoes made no sound on the carpet. Up close, she could see the details she had only glimpsed from a distance. The scar through his left eyebrow. The coldness in his gray eyes. The tattoo on his neck that read loyalty in Gothic script. He stopped 3 feet away. You work late, he said. His voice was deeper than she expected. Controlled. I clean at night. That is when the building is empty. Not tonight. No, not tonight. He studied her face. She felt like a document being reviewed for errors. What is your name? Miriam López. How long have you worked here, Miriam López? 2 years. 2 years. He repeated it like he was testing the weight of the words. And in 2 years, you have never once looked at me when I pass through the lobby. I am working. I do not look at anyone. Everyone looks at me. I am not everyone. Something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile. But the hard line of his mouth softened for half a second before returning to stone. No, he said quietly. I suppose you are not. He reached into his jacket pocket. Miriam tensed. But he only pulled out a business card and held it out to her. Come to this address tomorrow at noon. There is a job I need done. It pays well. Miriam did not take the card. I already have 3 jobs. This one pays better than all of them combined. What kind of job? The kind that requires discretion, and someone who does not look at things they should not see. He placed the card on her cleaning cart and walked back toward his office. At the door, he stopped. Your mother needs surgery. $8,000. I can make that happen by the end of the week. Miriam's blood went cold. How do you know about my mother? He did not answer. Just stepped into his office and closed the door behind him. Miriam stood alone in the empty hallway, staring at the business card. A simple white card with an address in South Boston and nothing else. She should throw it away. She should pretend this conversation never happened. She should go back to her cart and finish her shift and forget that Edward Sherman ever spoke her name. But $8,000. Her mother's life. She picked up the card and slipped it into her pocket. The address led to a warehouse on Summer Street in South Boston. Red brick. No signage. A single black door with a camera mounted above it. Miriam stood outside for 3 minutes before she knocked. She had changed out of her cleaning uniform. Dark jeans. A gray sweater she had bought secondhand 2 years ago. Her good coat, the one she saved for church and interviews. She had not slept. Had not eaten. Had spent the night staring at the ceiling of her tiny apartment in Dorchester, running calculations in her head. $8,000. Her mother's heart surgery. Whatever this man wanted, she could not afford to say no. The door opened. A woman in her 50s stood inside. Short gray hair. Sharp eyes. Black pantsuit that looked like it cost more than Miriam's rent. You are Miriam? Yes. Follow me. The inside of the warehouse looked nothing like the outside. Clean white walls. Polished concrete floors. A long hallway lined with doors. At the end, a freight elevator with brushed steel doors. The woman led her to the 3rd door on the left. A small office with a desk, 2 chairs, and nothing else. Sit. He will be with you shortly. Miriam sat. The woman left. For 15 minutes, Miriam waited. She did not touch anything. Did not look at her phone. Just sat with her hands folded in her lap, controlling her breathing the way she did when she was afraid. The door opened. Edward Sherman walked in wearing a black sweater and dark pants. No jacket. No tie. The tattoos on his forearms were fully visible now. Skulls. Roses. Names she could not read. His knuckles spelled out a word on each hand. Left. Right. He sat across from her and placed a folder on the desk. The same folder she had seen in the lobby. The one with her photograph. Miriam López, he said. Born in San Pedro Sula, Honduras. Immigrated legally at 22. No criminal record. 3 jobs. 1 apartment. No car. No debt. Sends 40% of her income to family every month. He looked up at her. You are either the most responsible person I have ever met, or you are hiding something. I am not hiding anything. Everyone hides something. Not me. I work. I send money home. That is my life. He leaned back in his chair, studied her. Why did you come here today? Because my mother needs surgery and I cannot afford it. So you came to a man you do not know, in a building with no name, because he offered you money. Yes. That is either brave or stupid. It is neither. It is necessary. Something flickered in his eyes. That same almost smile from the night before. I need someone to clean my private residence, he said. 3 times a week. You come in, you do your job, you leave. You do not speak about what you see. You do not ask questions about who visits. You do not touch anything that is not related to cleaning. That is all. That is all. And the payment? $5,000 a month. Cash. Plus the $8,000 for your mother, paid up front. Miriam felt her heart stop. $5,000 a month. More than she made at all 3 jobs combined. Why me? Edward tilted his head slightly. Because you do not look at me. I do not understand. Everyone who works for me wants something. Money, power, protection, proximity. They look at me like I am a door they want to walk through. But you. He paused. You look at the floor. You do your work. You go home. You ask for nothing. Maybe I just do not want anything from you. Exactly. That is why I trust you. Miriam was silent for a long moment. If I say yes, what happens? My driver takes you to my residence. You see the space. You decide if you can do the work. If you agree, you start tomorrow. And if I say no? Then you walk out that door and we never speak again. No consequences. No retaliation. You go back to your 3 jobs and your $600 in savings. He knew. He knew exactly how much she had. You investigated me. I investigate everyone. That is a violation of my privacy. Yes. He did not apologize. Did not explain. Just sat there, waiting for her decision. Miriam thought about her mother. About the hospital in San Pedro Sula that was not good enough but was all they could afford. About her sisters who worked double shifts at a factory just to keep the lights on. About the promises she had made when she left Honduras 9 years ago. She had sworn she would take care of them. No matter what. I want the $8,000 wired to my mother's hospital by Friday. Done. I want a written contract. Signed. You will have it. And I want your word that this job is exactly what you described. Cleaning. Nothing else. Edward leaned forward. His gray eyes held hers. You have my word. Miriam stood up. Then show me the residence. The townhouse was on Beacon Hill. 4 stories. Red brick. Black shutters. A wrought iron gate that led to a private courtyard. Inside, it was colder than she expected. Not the temperature. The feeling. White walls. Gray furniture. No photographs. No personal items. No evidence that anyone actually lived there. It looked like a showroom for a life that had never been opened. Edward walked her through each floor in silence. Kitchen. Living room. Dining room. Study. 4 bedrooms. A rooftop terrace with a view of the Charles River. You clean everything except the basement, he said. That door stays locked. You do not ask about it. Fine. You come on Mondays, Wednesdays and Fridays. Between 10 and 2. I will not be here during those hours. Fine. He handed her a key. Silver. Heavy. No keychain. The driver will pick you up and drop you off. You do not take public transportation to this address. Ever. Miriam looked at the key in her hand. Felt the weight of it. "Why are you doing this?" she asked quietly. Edward was already walking toward the front door. "Because I need someone I can trust. You do not know me." He stopped, turned. "I know that you have worked 80-hour weeks for 9 years without complaint. I know that you have never missed a payment to your family. I know that you once walked 4 miles in a snowstorm because the bus broke down and you refused to be late for your shift." Miriam's throat tightened. He knew things no file could contain. "I have watched you for 2 years, Miriam López. I know exactly who you are." He opened the door and stepped outside. "The driver will take you home. Start Monday." The door closed behind him. Miriam stood alone in the empty townhouse, holding a key to a life she did not understand. She had just made a deal with a man who had blood on his associate's sleeves and secrets in his basement. And somehow, she was not afraid. She was curious. 3 months passed. Miriam cleaned the Beacon Hill townhouse every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. She arrived at 10, left at 2. Never saw Edward during those hours. Never touched the basement door. Never asked questions. The work was easy. The house was barely lived in. Dust settled on surfaces that were never used. The kitchen showed no signs of cooking. The dining room table had never held a meal. The bedrooms were pristine except for one. The master suite on the 3rd floor. That was where Edward slept. She knew because the sheets were always twisted. The pillows thrown to the floor. Whatever dreams visited him at night were not peaceful ones. She changed the linens, cleaned the bathroom, vacuumed the floors. And every time she entered that room, she felt like she was stepping into something private, something wounded. By the 3rd month, she had quit 2 of her other jobs. The money Edward paid her was more than enough. She sent double to her mother now. The surgery had been successful. Her sisters reported that their mother was walking again, laughing again, attending church on Sundays. Miriam should have been happy. Instead, she felt untethered. Like she had stepped off solid ground onto something that could shift at any moment. On a Friday afternoon in March, she was polishing the windows in the study when she heard the front door open. She froze. Edward never came home during her hours. That was the arrangement. Footsteps crossed the foyer. Heavy. Slow. Then they stopped. "Miriam." His voice came from the doorway behind her. She turned. He looked wrong. His face was pale. His left arm hung stiffly at his side. Dark stains marked the sleeve of his coat. "Blood. You are hurt," she said. "It is nothing." "That is not nothing." She moved toward him before she could stop herself. Instinct. The same instinct that had made her care for her sisters when they were sick, her mother when she was weak. He stepped back. "Do not. You need help." "I have people for that." "Then where are they?" He did not answer. Just stood there, swaying slightly, his jaw clenched against whatever pain he was feeling. Miriam made a decision. "Sit down." "Miriam." "Sit. Down." Something in her voice cut through his resistance. He walked to the leather chair by the fireplace and lowered himself into it. His breath came out in a controlled hiss. Miriam retrieved the first aid kit from the kitchen. She had seen it on her first day. Had noted its location the way she noted everything in this house. When she returned, Edward had removed his coat. His shirt was soaked through on the left side. A gash ran from his shoulder to his elbow. Deep but clean. A knife wound, if she had to guess. She knelt beside him and opened the kit. "I need to see it." He unbuttoned his shirt with his right hand. Slow. Painful. The fabric peeled away from the wound, and Miriam saw the full extent of the damage. "You need a hospital." "No hospitals. No records. You could get an infection. Then clean it." She looked at him. at the gray eyes that had watched her from across lobbies and hallways for 2 years, at the hard face that never showed weakness. He was showing it now. "This will hurt," she said. "I know." She worked in silence, cleaned the wound with antiseptic, applied butterfly closures to hold the edges together, wrapped the arm in gauze. Her hands were steady. Her breathing was even. She had done this before. For her father, years ago, before he died. For neighbors in San Pedro Sula who could not afford doctors. When she finished, Edward was watching her. "Where did you learn to do that?" "Honduras. When you cannot afford hospitals, you learn." "You are good at it." "I am good at many things." He almost smiled. The closest she had ever seen him come to one. "Yes, you are." She stood up and began packing the first aid kit. Her hands were shaking now. The adrenaline was fading. "Who did this to you?" "It does not matter." "It matters to me." He looked at her. Really looked. Like he was seeing something he had not expected. "Why?" Miriam did not have an answer. Or maybe she had one but was not ready to speak it aloud. "You should rest," she said. "I will finish the study and leave." She turned toward the door. "Miriam." She stopped. "Thank you." 2 words. Simple. But the way he said them carried weight. Like they cost him something to speak. "You are welcome." She walked back to the study and finished polishing the windows. Her reflection stared back at her in the glass. A woman who had just dressed the wounds of a man she should fear. But she did not fear him. That was the problem. The following Monday, there was an envelope on the kitchen counter. Inside was $10,000 in cash and a handwritten note. "For your sisters. Send them to school." Miriam stared at the money. At the note written in sharp, angular handwriting. He knew. He knew that Lucia and Carmen had dropped out of school to work at the factory. He knew that Miriam had been trying to save enough to change that. She should return it. She should tell him that she could not be bought. That her loyalty was not for sale. But she thought about Lucia. 19 years old. Brilliant. Working 12-hour shifts assembling electronics for pennies. She thought about Carmen. 17. Already showing signs of the same exhaustion that had aged their mother before her time. Miriam put the money in her bag. That night, she wired it to Honduras. 2 weeks later, Edward came home early again. This time, he was not bleeding. He was just there. Sitting in the living room when she came downstairs from cleaning the bedrooms. "You do not have to leave," he said. "My hours are over. Stay. Have coffee with me." "That is not part of our arrangement." "No, it is not." He looked at her with those gray eyes. Waiting. Miriam should have left. Should have maintained the professional distance that protected her. That protected both of them. Instead, she sat down. Edward poured 2 cups of coffee from a French press she had never seen him use before. Handed her one. Their fingers brushed briefly. Neither of them acknowledged it. "Tell me about Honduras," he said. "What do you want to know?" "Everything." So she told him. About San Pedro Sula. About the violence she had grown up with. About her father who was killed when she was 16. About her mother who raised 3 daughters alone. About the day she boarded a plane with $200 and a work visa and no idea what awaited her. She talked for an hour. He listened without interrupting. When she finished, the coffee was cold and the afternoon light was fading. "You survived," he said. "I did what I had to do. That is surviving." He set down his cup. "My father was a monster," he said quietly. "He built everything I have on blood and fear. When he died, I inherited it all. The money, the power, the enemies, the sins." Miriam was silent. "I have spent my entire life becoming him. And I hate every part of myself that succeeded. He looked at her. You are the only clean thing in my world, Miriam. The only thing I have not corrupted. She should have stood up. Should have walked out. Should have reminded him that she was just his cleaning lady. But she did not. You have not corrupted me, she said softly. And you will not. Something broke open in his expression. Something raw and desperate. I do not know how to be good, he said. I do not know if I can. Miriam reached across the space between them, took his hand, felt the rough skin, the inked letters, the warmth beneath. Then learn, she said, one day at a time. They sat like that until the sun went down. Neither of them moved. Neither of them wanted to. Everything changed after that afternoon. Edward started coming home during her cleaning hours. Not every day, but often enough that she stopped being surprised. He would sit in the living room or the study, pretending to read or work, while she moved through the house with her supplies. They did not always talk. Sometimes the silence was enough. A presence. A proximity. Two people occupying the same space without needing to fill it with words. But when they did talk, the conversations went deep. He told her about his mother, who died when he was 12. About the private schools his father sent him to, hoping to polish away the rough edges. About the first time he took a life at 23, to protect his father's territory. He told her things no man in his position should tell anyone. And Miriam listened. Without judgment. Without fear. In return, she shared pieces of herself she had never given anyone. The nightmares she still had about her father's death. The guilt she carried for leaving her family behind. The loneliness of building a life in a country that sometimes felt like it would never truly accept her. They were two people who had learned to survive by building walls. Now those walls were crumbling. In April, Miriam's sister Carmen called with news. Lucia had been accepted to a university in Tegucigalpa. Full scholarship for tuition. But she still needed money for housing, books, and transportation. $4,000 for the first year. Miriam did the math. She could cover it if she picked up extra shifts somewhere. If she went back to the laundromat or the daycare. If she gave up sleep again. She did not tell Edward. But he knew anyway. The following Monday, there was another envelope on the kitchen counter. $10,000. No note this time. Miriam found him in the study. I cannot keep accepting this, she said. It is not charity. Then what is it? He looked up from the documents he was reviewing. It is an investment. In what? In you. In your family. In the only thing in my life that makes sense. Miriam felt her chest tighten. Edward, I am your cleaning lady. You are more than that. You know it. I know it. She shook her head. This cannot happen. Why? Because of who you are. What you do. The world you live in. He stood up. Walked toward her slowly. I have spent my entire life in that world. It is the only one I know. But when I am with you. He stopped. Searched for words he was not used to speaking. When I am with you, I remember that there might be something else. Something worth wanting. Miriam felt tears burning behind her eyes. You do not know me. Not really. I know that you wake up at 5 every morning to call your mother before her medication makes her too tired to talk. I know that you light a candle for your father every Sunday at St. Cecilia's in Back Bay. I know that you have read the same book 17 times because it was the last gift he gave you before he died. She stared at him. How do you know these things? Because I pay attention. Because you are the only person I have ever wanted to understand. He reached for her hand. She let him take it. I am not asking you to fix me, Miriam. I am not asking you to save me. I am just asking you to stay. To let me prove that I can be more than what my father made me. Miriam looked at their joined hands. His scarred, inked, stained by violence she could not imagine. Hers calloused, worn, shaped by years of hard labor. 2 hands that should never have touched. But they fit. I cannot make any promises, she whispered. I am not asking for promises. Just time. She nodded slowly. He exhaled. The tension in his shoulders released. For a moment, they just stood there, holding hands in the fading afternoon light. Then he lifted her hand to his lips and kissed her knuckles. Gentle, reverent, like she was something precious, like she mattered. For 2 months, they existed in this fragile space between employer and something more. Edward cleared his schedule on the days she cleaned. They shared meals, long conversations, quiet evenings on the rooftop terrace, watching the lights of Boston flicker to life. He never pushed for more than she was willing to give. Never crossed the line she had drawn. But the line was getting thinner. And Miriam was starting to wonder if she even wanted it there anymore. Then everything fell apart. It was a Wednesday in June. Hot. Humid. The kind of day that made the city feel like it was suffocating. Miriam arrived at the townhouse at her usual time. Used her key. Stepped inside. And found a woman standing in the foyer. Tall. Blonde. Expensive clothes. A diamond bracelet that caught the light. Who the hell are you? The woman asked. Miriam's heart stopped. I am the housekeeper. The housekeeper. The woman laughed. Cold. Dismissive. Is that what he is calling it now? Footsteps on the stairs. Edward appeared on the landing. His face went pale when he saw both of them. Victoria. What are you doing here? The woman turned to face him. Her expression shifted from cold to venomous. I came to discuss our arrangement, Edward. The one where I overlook your indiscretions and you keep funding my father's campaign. But I did not realize you had moved your latest distraction into our home. Miriam felt the floor tilt beneath her feet. Our home. She looked at Edward, searching for an explanation. A denial. Anything. He said nothing. She does not know, does she? Victoria smiled. The cruelest smile Miriam had ever seen. Poor thing. She actually believed she was special. Miriam dropped her cleaning supplies. Who is she? Her voice came out steady, calm, the opposite of what she felt inside. Edward finally moved, came down the stairs, reached for her. Miriam, let me explain. She stepped back. Who is she? Silence. Victoria answered for him. I am his fiancée. The word hit Miriam like a physical blow. Fiancée. He had held her hand, kissed her knuckles, told her she was the only clean thing in his world. And he had a fiancée. Miriam. Edward's voice was desperate. It is not what you think. It is a business arrangement. A political alliance. I do not love her. I have never loved her. But you are engaged to her. In name only. My father arranged it before he died. I have been trying to find a way out. For how long? He hesitated. 3 years. 3 years. He had been engaged for 3 years. Had started watching Miriam 2 years ago. Had brought her into his home knowing this woman existed. I trusted you, Miriam whispered. You can still trust me. No. She shook her head. No, I cannot. She walked past Victoria, past Edward, out the front door. He followed her onto the street. Miriam, please. Just let me explain. Give me a chance to. She turned around. I gave you everything, Edward. My time. My stories. My family's secrets. I let you into parts of my life that I have never shared with anyone. And you could not even tell me you were engaged. I was afraid. Of what? Of losing you. of watching you walk away the moment you found out. So you lied instead. I did not lie. You just let me believe something that was not true. That is the same thing. He stood there, broken, desperate, the most powerful man in Boston, brought to his knees by a cleaning woman he could not bear to lose. Tell me what to do, he said. Tell me how to fix this. Miriam looked at him. At the man she had started to love. At the life she had almost let herself imagine. End it, she said. End the engagement. Walk away from everything your father built. Become someone who deserves what you are asking for. That could take years. Then it takes years. She turned and walked away. This time, he did not follow. Miriam did not return to the townhouse. She left the key in an envelope with no note and mailed it to Sherman Tower. Then she picked up her old job at the laundromat in Dorchester. The owner, a Vietnamese woman named Mrs. Phan, did not ask questions. Just handed her an apron and pointed to the machines that needed servicing. It was a step backward. Miriam knew that. But backward felt safer than forward. She changed her phone number. Moved to a smaller apartment in East Boston, closer to the airport, where the rent was cheaper and the neighbors minded their own business. She told her family nothing about what had happened. Just said the cleaning job had ended and she was looking for something new. Her mother sensed something was wrong. Mothers always do. Mija, you sound tired. Not the body tired. The soul tired. I am fine, Mama. You are lying. But I will wait until you are ready to tell me the truth. Miriam hung up and stared at the wall of her new apartment. Bare white. No decorations. No photographs. A blank space for a blank future. She had done the right thing. She knew that. Edward Sherman was a man built on violence and secrets and lies. Staying with him would have meant compromising everything she believed in. Everything she had worked for. But knowing she had done the right thing did not stop the ache in her chest. It did not stop her from dreaming about him every night. 3 weeks after she left, a letter arrived. No return address. Just her name written in that sharp, angular handwriting she recognized immediately. She almost threw it away unopened. Instead, she sat on her bed and stared at it for an hour. Then she opened it. Miriam. I ended the engagement. Victoria's father withdrew his support from 3 of my business ventures in retaliation. I do not care. I told my lawyers to begin the process of divesting from everything my father built. The legitimate businesses will be sold. The rest will be dismantled. It will take time. Months, probably. Maybe longer. But I have started. I am not writing to ask you to come back. I know I have not earned that. I am writing because you told me to become someone who deserves what I was asking for. I want you to know that I am trying. I do not expect a response. I do not expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that your words meant something. That you meant something. That you still mean everything. Edward. Miriam read the letter 3 times. Then she folded it carefully and placed it in the drawer of her nightstand. She did not write back. 2 months later, a second letter arrived. Miriam. The sale of Sherman Holdings closed last week. $43 million, distributed to 6 different charities focused on immigrant support services, youth education, and violence prevention. I kept nothing except the townhouse on Beacon Hill. I could not bring myself to sell it. Too many memories. I have started seeing a therapist. A woman named Dr. Reyes. She is blunt and unimpressed by my money, which I think is exactly what I need. She says I have spent my entire life performing strength instead of feeling it. She is probably right. I still think about you every day. I still miss the sound of your voice in my house. I still reach for my phone to text you before I remember that you changed your number. I hope you are well. I hope your mother is healthy. I hope Lucia is thriving at university. I hope Carmen is finding her own path. I hope you are happy, Edward. Miriam sat with this letter for a long time. He was changing. Genuinely changing. Not for show. Not for manipulation. But because she had told him to. Because she had believed he could. She still did not write back. But she kept the letter with the first one. 4 months after that, a third letter arrived. This one was different. Miriam. My mother's birthday was yesterday. She would have been 67. I visited her grave for the first time since I was a teenager. I brought flowers. White roses. Her favorite. I sat there for 2 hours and talked to her. Told her about my father. About the things I did in his name. About the man I became and the man I am trying to be. I told her about you. I said that I met a woman who showed me what it means to work for something instead of taking it. What it means to love someone without expecting anything in return. What it means to be brave not with fists but with honesty. I told her that I lost you because I was too afraid to deserve you. Dr. Reyes says I am making progress. That I am learning to separate my identity from my father's legacy. That healing is not a destination but a direction. I do not know if you will ever read these letters. I do not know if you throw them away the moment you see my handwriting. But I will keep writing them anyway. Because you taught me that showing up matters. Even when no one is watching. Even when there is no reward. Thank you for that. Edward. Miriam pressed the letter to her chest. And for the first time since she walked out of that townhouse, she cried. The next morning, she woke up early. She made coffee. Sat by the window. Watched the planes take off from Logan Airport, carrying people to destinations she would never see. Then she pulled out a piece of paper and a pen. She wrote one sentence. I am still here. She addressed it to the townhouse on Beacon Hill. And she mailed it before she could change her mind. 1 week passed with no response. Miriam told herself it did not matter. That she had not written to receive anything in return. That she had simply wanted him to know she was listening. But every day when she checked her mailbox, her heart beat a little faster. On the 8th day, she found an envelope. Same sharp handwriting. Same absence of a return address. Inside was not a letter. It was a photograph. Edward stood in front of a building she did not recognize. Brick facade. Large windows. A sign above the door that read Sherman Community Center in bold letters. He was not smiling. But there was something different about his face. The hardness had softened. The shadows under his eyes were lighter. On the back of the photograph, he had written 3 words. Because of you. Miriam turned the photograph over and studied it again. The community center. His name on the building. A piece of his father's empire transformed into something that helped people instead of hurting them. She wondered how long it had taken him. How much resistance he had faced from the people who depended on the old ways. How many times he had wanted to quit. But he had not quit. He had kept going. The following Saturday, Miriam took the train to South Boston. She had not told anyone where she was going. Had not even admitted to herself what she was doing until she was already on the platform, watching the city blur past the windows. The community center was on West Broadway. Smaller than she had expected. But alive. Children ran through the front doors with backpacks. Parents lingered on the sidewalk, talking in small groups. A banner advertised free English classes on Tuesday evenings. Miriam stood across the street for 20 minutes, watching. She saw him before he saw her. Edward emerged from the building with a little boy on his shoulders. The child was laughing, gripping Edward's hair with both hands. Edward was pretending to stumble, making exaggerated sounds of distress that only made the boy laugh harder. Miriam had never seen him like this. Playful. Light. Human. A woman approached Edward and took the child from his shoulders. She thanked him in Spanish. He responded in Spanish. Fluent. Comfortable. Not the stiff, formal Spanish of textbooks, but the natural rhythm of someone who had practiced with native speakers. Miriam's throat tightened. He had learned her language. The woman walked away with her son. Edward turned toward the street. Their eyes met. For a long moment, neither of them moved. Then he crossed the street toward her. Slow. Careful. Like he was approaching something fragile. He stopped 3 feet away. You came. I came. I was not sure you would. Neither was I. They stood in silence. The noise of the neighborhood continued around them. Children shouting. Cars passing. The distant rumble of the train she had arrived on. You look different, she said finally. I feel different. The center. It is beautiful. It is a start. He glanced back at the building. We offer after-school programs. Job training. Legal aid for immigration cases. Dr. Reyes helped me find people who actually know how to run something like this. I just provide the funding and show up when I can. You were speaking Spanish. I have been taking lessons. 3 times a week for the past 4 months. He paused. I wanted to be able to talk to your mother someday. If you ever let me meet her. Miriam felt her defenses cracking. The walls she had rebuilt so carefully after leaving him. Edward. I know I have not earned anything yet. I know you have every reason to walk away right now and never look back. Then why did you send me that photograph? He met her eyes. Because I wanted you to see that your words mattered. That I listened. That I am still listening. And what do you want from me? He took a breath. The kind of breath people take before saying something that costs them everything. I want to start over. Not as your employer. Not as the man who lied to you. Just as someone who wants to know you. Properly this time. Honestly. That is a lot to ask. I know. I am not the same person I was when I worked for you. Neither am I. Miriam looked at the community center. At the children playing on the sidewalk. At the banner advertising free English classes. She thought about her father. About the violence that took him. About the life she had built from nothing in a country that often treated her like she did not belong. She thought about Edward. About the man he had been. About the man he was becoming. There is a coffee shop 2 blocks from here, she said. They have good café con leche. Something shifted in his expression. Not hope exactly, but the possibility of hope. Are you inviting me? I am giving you a chance. 1 conversation. No promises. 1 conversation is enough. They walked side by side toward the coffee shop. Not touching. Not talking. Just 2 people moving in the same direction. It was not forgiveness. It was not reconciliation. But it was a beginning. The coffee shop was called La Ventana. Small. Crowded. Walls covered in old photographs of Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic. The smell of roasted beans and fried plantains filled the air. Miriam ordered 2 café con leches. Edward paid before she could reach for her wallet. She let him. It was not about the money. It was about letting him do something small. Something normal. They found a table near the back window. Sat across from each other like strangers on a first date. Because in some ways, that is exactly what they were. Tell me about your work, Edward said. Since you left. I went back to the laundromat. Mrs. Fan needed help. The hours are long but the work is honest. Do you miss the townhouse? Miriam considered the question carefully. I miss the quiet. The space. But I do not miss feeling like I was waiting for something to fall apart. Edward nodded slowly. He understood. I sold most of my father's properties. The ones that were connected to the old business. The lawyers said I was insane. That I was giving away generational wealth. What did you tell them? That generational wealth built on blood is not wealth. It is debt. Miriam wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. The warmth seeped into her palms. Victoria. What happened with her? She married a senator's son 3 months after we ended things. I think she was relieved. The engagement was a burden for both of us. Did you love her? Ever? No. I respected her intelligence, her ambition. But love requires vulnerability. I was not capable of that when we were together. And now? He looked at her. Those grey eyes that had once seemed so cold now held something different. Something open. Now I am learning. Slowly. Painfully. But I am learning. A woman behind the counter called out an order in Spanish. The door opened and closed as customers came and went. Life continued around them, indifferent to the weight of their conversation. My mother wants to meet you, Miriam said suddenly. Edward blinked. What? I told her about you. Not everything, but enough. She said any man who learns Spanish for a woman he is not even sure will speak to him again is worth meeting. You told your mother about me. She asked why I was sad. I could not lie to her. Edward set down his coffee cup. His hands were trembling slightly. Miriam, I need you to understand something. What? I am not a good man. I have done things that cannot be undone. Hurt people who did not deserve it. Made choices that I will carry for the rest of my life. I know. Then why are you here? Why are you giving me another chance? Miriam thought about the question. She had asked herself the same thing 100 times since mailing that letter. Because my father used to say that a man is not defined by his worst moment. He is defined by what he does after. Edward was silent. My father was killed by men like you, Edward. Men who thought violence was the only language that mattered. I grew up hating those men. Fearing them. Swearing I would never let one into my life. She reached across the table. Took his hand. But you are not those men anymore. You are trying to become someone different. And I believe that trying matters. His fingers closed around hers. Rough. Warm. Steady. I do not deserve you. No. You do not. But I am not asking you to deserve me. I am asking you to show up. Every day. Even when it is hard. Even when you fail. Can you do that? Yes. Then that is enough. For now. They sat like that for a long time. 2 hands intertwined on a small table in a crowded coffee shop. 2 people who had found each other in the most unlikely circumstances. It was not a fairy tale. It was not a guarantee. But it was real. And real was more than Miriam had ever dared to hope for. 3 months later, Miriam flew to Honduras. It was her first trip home in 9 years. Her mother met her at the airport in San Pedro Sula, thinner than Miriam remembered but stronger. Lucia was there too, wearing the university sweatshirt Miriam had sent her. Carmen stood behind them, taller now, with their father's eyes. They held each other in the arrivals hall and cried. You came back, her mother whispered. I always said I would. I know. But saying and doing are different things. Miriam stayed for 2 weeks. She slept in her childhood bedroom, which her mother had kept exactly as she left it. She ate the foods she had dreamed about during cold Boston winters. She visited her father's grave and told him everything. About Edward. About the community center. About the man who was learning to be good. Do you love him? Her mother asked one evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. I think I do. Does he treat you well? He is learning to. Her mother nodded slowly. Then bring him next time. I want to see this man who learned Spanish for my daughter. Miriam smiled. I will. When she returned to Boston, Edward was waiting at the airport. He stood near the arrivals gate with a single white rose in his hand. No security guards. No expensive car. Just a man waiting for a woman. Miriam walked toward him. You did not have to come. I wanted to. She took the rose. Smelled it. White roses. His mother's favorite. My mother says you have to come to Honduras next time. Tell her I will be there. She also says if you hurt me, she will find you. And she knows people. Edward laughed. A real laugh. The kind she had never heard from him before. I believe her. They walked out of the airport together. Into the warm September evening. Into a future that was uncertain but no longer frightening. Miriam had spent 9 years building a life alone. Carrying her family. Carrying her grief. Carrying the weight of survival. Now she had someone to share the weight with. And for the first time in her life, she let herself believe that was okay. 2 years passed. Miriam no longer worked at the laundromat. She had started her own cleaning business, serving small offices and family homes in East Boston and Chelsea. 3 employees now. All immigrant women. All paid fairly, with health insurance and flexible hours for those with children. She had named the company Manos Limpias. Clean hands. A name that meant more to her than anyone knew. Edward had helped with the startup costs. Not as charity. As a loan, with interest, documented properly by lawyers. Miriam had insisted. She would not build her dream on gifts. Only on work. He understood. The Sherman Community Center had expanded. A second location opened in Roxbury. A third was planned for Lawrence. Edward spent most of his days there now, meeting with families, reviewing program proposals, learning the names of every child who walked through the doors. The tattoos remained. The scars remained. But the man behind them had changed. On a Saturday morning in October, Miriam woke up in the Beacon Hill townhouse. She had moved in 6 months earlier, after a long conversation about what it meant and what it did not mean. She kept her apartment in East Boston as an office for her business. A space that was still hers. A reminder that she had built something independent of him. Edward was already awake. She could hear him in the kitchen, making coffee the way she had taught him. Strong. Sweet. A little cinnamon. She lay in bed for a moment, listening to the sounds of the house. The creak of the old floors. The hiss of the espresso machine. The distant hum of the city outside. It still amazed her sometimes. That she was here. That this was her life. She got up and walked downstairs. Edward stood at the counter, pouring 2 cups. He wore a simple gray t-shirt and sweatpants. No suits. No armor. Just a man in his kitchen. Good morning, he said. Good morning. He handed her a cup. Their fingers brushed. She still felt it every time. I have something for you, he said. It is not my birthday. I know. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. Miriam's heart stopped. Edward. Before you say anything, I want you to know that this is not a demand. It is not an expectation. It is a question. And whatever your answer is, it will not change how I feel about you. He opened the box. Inside was a ring. Simple. Elegant. A single diamond set in white gold. Not the kind of ring a man buys to impress. The kind of ring a man buys because he knows the woman he loves. I have spent my whole life taking things, Edward said quietly. Power. Money. Control. I never asked for anything because asking meant admitting I needed something outside myself. He looked at her. But I need you, Miriam. Not to fix me. Not to save me. Just to be with me. To build something together that neither of us could build alone. Miriam set down her coffee cup. Her hands were shaking. I know I am not the man you imagined ending up with. I know my past will always be a shadow. But I promise you, every day for the rest of my life, I will show up. I will try. I will be the man you believed I could be before I believed it myself. He took her hand. Miriam López. Will you marry me? She looked at the ring, at the man holding it, at the life they had built together from broken pieces and second chances. She thought about her father, about what he would say if he could see her now, about whether he would approve of this man who had learned to be good through pain and persistence. She thought about her mother, about the voice on the phone every Sunday, asking when Edward was coming to Honduras, about the packages of homemade tortillas that arrived every month with notes addressed to both of them. She thought about herself, about the woman who had crossed an ocean with $200 and a dream, about the woman who had cleaned floors and washed sheets and sent every spare penny home, about the woman who had walked away from a man she loved because she refused to settle for less than she deserved. That woman had not settled. That woman had waited. And now that woman was ready. Yes, she whispered. Edward exhaled. A sound of pure relief. Pure joy. He slid the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. Then he pulled her into his arms and held her. Tight. Desperate. Like he had been waiting his whole life for this moment. Thank you, he murmured into her hair. For what? For seeing me. For staying. For believing I could change. Miriam pulled back and looked at his face. The grey eyes that had once been so cold. The hard jaw that now softened when he smiled. The man who had been her employer, her adversary, her heartbreak, and now her future. You did the hard work, she said. I just refused to give up on you. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. And for the first time in her life, Miriam felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. The wedding took place the following spring. Small. Intimate. Held at the community center in South Boston, surrounded by the families Edward had helped and the women Miriam employed. Her mother flew in from Honduras. Lucia and Carmen came too, wearing dresses Miriam had bought them and crying through the entire ceremony. Edward's side was smaller. Dr. Reyes attended. A few staff members from the center. No one from his old life. He had left that behind completely. They exchanged vows they had written themselves. Miriam promised to challenge him when he was wrong, support him when he was struggling, and love him even when he forgot how to love himself. Edward promised to show up every day, to keep learning, to build a life worthy of the woman who had given him a second chance. They danced their first dance to a song Miriam's father used to play on Sunday mornings. A merengue about finding home in unexpected places. Her mother cried. Edward held Miriam close and whispered in her ear. I never thought I would have this. Neither did I. Thank you for proving me wrong. She smiled against his shoulder. You proved yourself wrong. I just watched. That night, after the guests had left and the center was quiet, Miriam and Edward stood on the rooftop terrace of the townhouse. The city stretched out below them. Lights flickering. Lives unfolding. A million stories happening at once. Miriam leaned against her husband. Felt his arm wrap around her shoulders. What happens now? She asked. Now we live. We build. We figure it out together. That sounds terrifying. It does. He kissed the top of her head. But I would rather be terrified with you than safe without you. Miriam closed her eyes. She had spent her whole life working, sacrificing, carrying the weight of everyone else's dreams. Now she had her own. A business. A family. A partner who had earned her trust through action, not words. A life she had built with her own hands. She opened her eyes and looked at the city one more time. Then she took Edward's hand and led him inside. The future was waiting. And for the first time, she was ready to meet it. Thank you so much for staying with me through this entire story. It means the world that you took the time to listen. If this story touched you, please hit that subscribe button and leave a comment telling me where you are watching from today. I read every single one, and I would love to hear your thoughts. Until next time, take care of yourselves and the people you love.